Hello students, welcome to this video tutorial. In this tutorial, I will be explaining a poem, Prayer Before Birth by Louis Magnus. This is the fourth lesson in our English literature book. First of all, let us learn something about the poet. Frederick Louis Magnus was an Irish poet and playwright from Northern Ireland and a member of Auden Group. Married to Giovanna Isra, he accepted a post as a classical lecturer at the University of Birmingham. Then he went to teach Greek at Bedford College for Women, University of London. Magnus worked for BBC in writing and producing radio programs intended to build support for the US and later Russia. Some of his best-known plays and poetry are Christopher Columbus, The Dark Tower, Autumn Journals, Plants and Phantoms. Louis Magnus suffered from pneumonia and died on September 3, 1963 at the age of 55, just before the publication of the poems The Burning Birch. The poem, Prayer Before Birth. The poem gives the message, a very strong message. The poet conveys in the poem the notion of improving some of the negative aspects in the outside world or macrocosmos which have developed because of the adverse and detrimental advancement that have taken place, especially considering the fact that Louis Magnus led from 1907 to 1963, he would have experienced the fatalities and catastrophic consequences of two consecutive wars, First World War and the Second World War, explaining his perspectives on it as he expresses emphatically throughout the poem. The poem was written during the terror-struck days of World War II. The poet expresses his fear at what the world's tyranny can do to the innocence of a child. The poet places the realities of an evil world into the mouth of a baby not even born. The unborn child cries out for protection against evil that he would experience during his life. The unborn child calls out to God as the only one who can protect against the evil of the world. The poem as a whole is to be from the point of view of a newborn baby or an unborn baby. Let us learn the poem stanza-wise. The first stanza, I am not yet born, oh hear me. Let not the blood-sucking bat, or the rat, or the stoat, or the club-footed gull come near me. Here, in the first stanza, you will find the first 5 words, that is, I am not yet born, is an anaphora. Okay, an anaphora is a poetic device which keeps on repeating. So these 5 words, I am not yet born, you will find this being repeated at the beginning of each of the stanza throughout the poem. So this repetition highly exaggerates the problem in our world, as it shows that the baby is determined to not be born, because it keeps reminding the reader that it is in the womb, as if it is in a certain way enjoying its time. The first stanza is the first prayer of the child upon entering the world. It is the first call for protection before he is being born. Remember, this is a prayer of an unborn child, an unborn child which is still in its mother's womb. The unborn child asks for protection from the evils in the spiritual realm. It is about the childish fears that every child has. He asks God to hear him and keep him away from nocturnal beasts like the bat, read, or distort, both real and unreal, so that they do not harm the child. The blood-sucking bat may refer to the parasites that exist within us. The world seems to be infested with vermin, and the poet asks us to shield ourselves from them. With the opening stanza, the newborn is seeking God's protection from evil spirit and from diseases, one of the first negativities of the world we live in. Here in the note, I have given some meanings like the club-footed goal. What does it identifies? It identifies a mystical, if not evil being. Red and bad, what does it represent? It represents diseases brought about by two creatures which are often contagious, such as Black Death and rabies. Moving on, this is a very short synopsis of the first stanza. The writer makes clear in the first paragraph or stanza that he writes from the baby's perspective in the poem, who is evidently not quite enthusiastic about his entrance to the world and is fairly skeptical about humanity. He is scared to encounter all the evils in the world. Moving on to the next stanza, I am not yet born, console me. I fear that the human race may with tall walls wall me, with strong drugs dupe me, with wise lies lure me, with black rags wreck me, in bloodbaths roll me. Here in the second stanza, consolation is a religious subject, but here it means to comfort. The unborn child already seek help and support from God. There is a fear of being walled in. Walls are always controversial, often political. In short, he is seeking for protection against human race. He asks to be guarded from addiction, from war, from lies, that is fake news, or as mentioned in the box, which I will read after this, from being tortured or on rags, and of being blooded in a battle. Here, the poetic device used by the poet is alliteration, the underlined words. If you read the underlined words, this is called alliteration, a poetic device, which is here it is used. First of all, let me tell you the definition. What is alliteration? It is the use of the same sound or sounds, especially consonant, at the beginning of several words that are close together. So here it is used to show the horror captivated in the mind of the child. It also suggests that the writer is directly referring to the negativities of the world through this mini alliteration, such as bloodbath, which is also referred as war, or that during war there is bloodshed. So in this way, if you read the alliteration in the box, it will be quite meaningful and it will make your understanding to the second stanza more in depth. The poem contains religious theme and a metaphor. The child is in some ways suggested as an avatar of Christ, trying to improve the conditions in the world without being born. So here in the second stanza, the unborn child views human almost as if they are a threat to the world and the people within it. In this stanza, it lists out and implies all the wrongdoings that have happened in the history. The theme of fear can be explored in this stanza. The horrors of the world are revealed. The third stanza, I am not yet born, provide me with water to dandle me, grass to grow for me, trees to talk to me, sky to sing to me, birds and a white light in the back of my mind to guide me. Nature features strongly in this stanza. The most hopeful lines in the poem. The element water. The child wants to be able to play in it. The child wants grass to grow, trees to talk to him, skies to sing to him, and heavenly wisdom to guide him. All these beautiful things that make a paradise a healthy, ideal environment in which to live. All this personification of and optimism seems very innocent in context to the poem as a whole. But during war times, when situations are not good, such a beautiful environment is just a dream. Here in the green box, you will find the meaning of a white light in the back of my mind to guide, which is asking God for wisdom. In this poem, or in this stanza, in the third stanza, you will find two interpretations, a positive and a negative. The positive interpretation is it's talking about the beautiful aspects of the outside world, or the world that makes the people realize that the actual world is not entirely malevolent. Next is a negative interpretation, the damaging effect wars have on the natural environment. His plea to God to restore nature which are already demolished due to war. Grass which is uprooted or outrooted by fights. Water contaminated by gas. Birds endangered because of killing. Here in the third stanza, the baby asks God to guide him through life and enhance his experience through Mother Nature. It asks for a good upcoming life, addressing God directly as if the baby has been released into the world by God himself. It wishes to live happy life before being born. The fourth stanza, I am not yet born, forgive me for the sins that in me the world shall commit. My words when they speak me, my thoughts when they think me, my treason endangered by my traitors beyond me, my life when they murder by means of my hands, my death when they leave me. The baby seems to be a little matured in the fourth stanza. The poet knows that no human being has the power to avoid all sins, and therefore he uses the voice of the unborn baby to ask for forgiveness for the sin which he would be sure to commit once he is born. He asks for forgiveness for his words, his thoughts, his betrayal to his nation, and even for murder. The author seems to assume that this newborn will inevitably commit all of these crimes. Thus he asks for forgiveness. Here some meanings are given, and we will also find the religious illusion. If you go down after treason, the meaning of treason, the crime of betraying one's own country. Endangered, that is at risk, where there is a strong possibility something bad will happen. Right after that you will find the point religious illusion occurs. It is referring to sins and forgiveness, as if the child is to be born as Christ figure, ready for sacrifice. The possessive adjective my is repeated a lot of time, depicting and reinforcing the idea of premature fantasizing about all these thoughts and ideologies. In this stanza, the writer reinforced the idea of human being the threat. The baby accepts and acknowledges that humans always do wrong things and asks God for forgiveness. And so the unborn child is seeking for forgiveness for whatever sin he is going to commit after being born. Moving on to the fifth stanza, I am not yet born. Release me in the parts I must play and the cues I must take. When all men lecture me, bureaucrats hector me, mountains frown at me, lovers laugh at me, the white waves call me to folly, and the desert calls me to doom, and the baker refuses my gift, and my children curse me. In this stanza, the speaker asks for guidance from God. He knows that there will be plenty of people in his life who will fill his mind with ideas and opinions, but he asks God that he would guide him with his own wisdom to get him through life. Though all men would try to instruct him, he desires to know the instruction of God himself. Though he might face opposition to nature at times, he asks God to help him know what to do when the mountain thrown at him. He asks God for strength to endure life, even when lovers laugh at him and when the baker refuses his gift. He even asks God to guide him when he comes to the day when his own child would curse him. The author is clearly aware of all the hardship of newborn child would face. Therefore, he gives the child a voice which calls out to God in plea for guidance and protection. Here the writer talks about the pressure in the outside of the womb. I would like you to go through the meanings of Hector, bureaucrats, frown, or doom from the box. Here, the part which is mentioned in the poem, in this stanza, it may be a reference to the roles such as of a family. So here, ideally, one is supposed to be able to support one's family when with a certain level of wealth. So that is the part that a person should play in a family once he is born. Cues. It can be interpreted as the jobs in the world, as one is forced to work hard and earn money, therefore taking one's cues with society. The unborn child explores another one of the negativities of living in the outside world, the pressure. It is aware that after birth, it will have to deal with the struggle of life in general, such as raising a family and earning money. Sixth stanza, I am not yet born, O hear me. Let not the man who is a beast or who thinks he is God come near me. In this stanza, the poet reveals his knowledge of humankind. The speaker, the newborn baby or the unborn baby, asks that God would keep him far away from any human being who would give way to instinct so much as to resemble a beast. He would not want himself to be surrounded with those who cannot keep themselves under control. He also asks God that he would be kept far away from any man who thinks he is God. These two different types of human beings represent two totally opposite ends of the spectrum of humanity. While some gives way to every temptation and live like beasts, others would view themselves as God. Thus, the speaker wants nothing to do with any of this type of human being. The phrase, who thinks he is God? Who thinks he is God? May be the reference to the act of terrorism that had commenced in the early 19th century, marking the initial of terrorism itself. In other words, people got too aggressive in order to promote their own religion, only resulting in one who thinks he is God. A short stanza repeating the demand to be heard from the first stanza. That is, the unborn child goes to extreme fear that a monster or Christ might become a negative influence. Seventh stanza, I am not yet born, or fill me with strength against those who would freeze my humanity, would dragon me into a little automaton, would make me a cog in a machine, a thing with one face, a thing and against all those who would dissipate my entirety, would blow me like a thistledown hither and thither like water, held in hands, would spill me. I would like you, and I'm repeating again and again, to go through the meanings which is given in the boxes. It will make your understanding of the stanza or of the poem very easy. So make sure that you go through the meanings that is given. Some of them you know the meaning, but how it is used in context of the poem, that would be very easier and convenient for you to understand. So here in the seventh stanza, the poet or the speaker calls out, not the speaker, I'm sorry, the unborn child calls out to God for protection against what the world would want to do to him. He does not want God to allow the people of the world to freeze his humanity. He does not want to become a cog in a machine. With this stanza, the author reveals what to think about war. When the baby asks God not to let him become a thing with one face, a thing against all those who would dissipate my entirety, it is clear that the poet feels hatred towards war. He knows that the other side wants to dissipate him, but he still does not want to become the face at the other hand. He does not want to become a little automaton that is trained to kill. He wants freedom from all this kind of lifestyle. In this stanza, the baby yet again addresses God directly to request him, however, this time for energy, strength to retaliate for himself. He does not feel that an individual would be able to survive out here. If you read the phrase "cock in a machine," it symbolizes that the child feels that the society would mold him into something insignificant and totally worthless. The last stanza, "Let them not make me a stone, and let them not spill me, otherwise kill me." Stone, a cold and motionless, spill me, meaningless existence, otherwise kill me. It is abruptness. In this stanza, the speaker asks for protection against being killed. He does not want the enemy to have his life in any way. Throughout prayer before birth, the speaker has asked for protection against every kind of evil. He longed to be kept pure from the evil so prevalent in the world. Finally, at the end of the poem, he asks God for his very life, which says, "Otherwise kill me." The fetus ends the poem abruptly on a negative note. Essentially, he wishes for his own death without even being born, making the readers feel pitiful towards him. It places a condition for God through the whole poem, saying that if he is not able to improve the world, he does not wish to live on it. Let us learn something about the form and structure of the poem. Structure. The poem is a free verse. It is a free verse poem of 8 stanzas and 39 lines in total. The poem is set out in free verse with no specific rhyme scheme, showing that it is not a poem to be taken easily and is quite serious. Repeated use of first person I. The poet is maintaining the first person from to emphasize the idea of a fetus, expressing it, highlighting the sense of regretfulness created. Imperatives to God. Directly addressing to God, it generates a sense of pity in the reader's mind for the child, as he is having to speak to God to improve the world. Use of the word "me" as the last word of the first and last line of each stanza. The repetitive word of "me" throughout the poem depicts an image of a newborn in the reader's mind, which becomes more persuasive as we want to help it. Sense of rhythm. A type of rhythm is created in the poem by some of the lines, which also created symmetry to make it more visual, appealing, and convincing. Verbs are also used in each first line, like hear, console, provide, forgive, rehearse, hear, feel, indicating it indicates focuses on the verse, and it ends with a final command, that is, "otherwise kill me." Theme of the poem, we find the theme of innocence, we find the theme of fear, despair, horror, and immorality. And at the end, the poetic devices, alliteration, which we have already discussed in the first paragraph, first stanza, alliteration. Then we have the anaphora, which is the first 5 words of each stanza repeating. Metaphor, let me tell you something about this metaphor. A metaphor is a figure of speech in which a word or phrase is applied to an object or action to which it is not literally applicable. For example, would make me a cock in a machine, a thing with one face. Next is personification. Personification is a figure of speech in which an inanimated object or an idea is given human qualities. Trees to talk to me. Trees and mountain frown at me. So trees and mountain are personified in this stanza. Simile. Simile is a figure of speech involving the comparison of one thing with another thing of different kind, used to make a description more more emphatic and vivid. Blow me like a thistle down. So these are the poetic devices used in the poem. Now, in conclusion, I would like to summarize the poem in a short way. So in conclusion, I would like to say that the poet reveals the negativities of the world we live in by exposing all the realities of it. He does through the theme of fear, horror, despair, and innocence throughout the influence of a newborn. Ultimately, this makes the readers think about the way they live their own lives and review themselves, obliging them to improve as a member of the community. It changed one's view of a fetus in the womb, as many people one would feel pitiful towards the baby, thus encouraging them to ameliorate the world. The writer impactfully affects the reader. This is all for this poetry or for this video tutorial. I hope you have learned the poem by now. As I mentioned before, I would like you and I want to request you to go through the hint box, the meaning of each slide, to understand the poem more in depth as well as more easily. It would be convenient for you. Thank you.